Let me tell you why I made this video. Someone left a comment on one of my recent uploads, and I haven't stopped thinking about it since. They wrote, "I test INTJ but also have INFJ in me. I'm extremely emotional but act on logic. You would never know how much I feel. I absorb others' emotions and energy. Sometimes I get scared or sad or angry out of the blue, until the person leaves." I gave them a short answer, but the truth is, that comment stayed with me, not just because it was honest, but because it put words to something I've quietly carried for years. That question, it's not just theirs. It's one I've asked myself more times than I'd admit. It took me a long time, years actually, to understand why I could see so clearly, and yet feel so much. Why I could be strategic, detached, composed on the outside, like a piece of perfectly fried chicken, crisp and golden, sealing everything in, while quietly overwhelmed underneath, where the heat never really left. At first, it felt like a split between types, part INTJ, part INFJ, precise but porous, structured but stormed by feelings I couldn't trace. But the deeper I looked, the more I realized, I'm not the only one. The real tension runs through almost every type. The extrovert who feels more like an observer than a participant. The feeler who questions every emotion before they allow it to speak. The thinker who analyzes every feeling but still gets consumed by it. And that's when I finally saw it clearly. This isn't confusion. It's a real experience, and it deserves a real answer. If this already resonates, subscribe now, because this isn't just a video, it's a map back to yourself. Let's answer that question. But if you're an INTJ, you're not the kind of person who's satisfied with shallow answers. You don't want noise. You're not looking for comfort. You're looking for structure, the architecture, the truth at the source. So let's stop circling around the test and go back to the roots. Not the letters, not the labels, but the man who built the foundation, Carl Jung. Before MBTI, before the letters, before the frameworks, Jung was trying to answer one question: what is the function of your soul? He believed that each of us is born with an internal orientation, a dominant way of perceiving the world, through intuition or sensation, and a dominant way of deciding, through thinking or feeling. Each of those oriented either inward, introverted, or outward, extroverted. From that internal blueprint, MBTI gave us types. You became an INTJ, introverted, intuitive, thinking, judging, meaning you lead with inner vision, use external logic to act, and prefer structured conclusions. And that's accurate, but it's also incomplete. Because Jung never meant for these categories to become cages. He reminded us, again and again, that every individual is an exception to the rule. There is only one way, he said, and that is your way. And he said it even more directly. The individual is the only reality. MBTI tells you what dominates you. But Jung wanted to know what waits beneath. Because in Jung's map, every psyche contains all 8 functions, but we consciously develop 4. One leads, one supports, one is tertiary, one is inferior. And often, it's the tertiary, the third function, that causes the most quiet confusion. The one that explains why you feel like a contradiction. The one MBTI doesn't name, yet it's been shaping your inner world all along. But before we unlock your third function, let me show you something else, something ancient hiding in plain sight. Did you know INTJs are often called old souls? Not because they're sentimental, but because their dominant function, introverted intuition, sees time symbolically. It connects present patterns with future outcomes. It makes you feel like you've already lived this moment, before it even happened. It's not mysticism. It's pattern recognition with memory embedded. And that's part of what makes this contradiction so hard. Because it's not just recent, it feels ancient. And here's a detail you might have missed. INTJs don't zone out, they zoom in. When they suddenly go quiet mid-conversation, they're not drifting. Their mind just latched onto something, an image, a contradiction, a hidden structure they can't unsee. That pause? It's precision, not distance. The confusion isn't new. It's a symptom of something deeper waking up. Now let's return to the third function. For INTJs, that function is introverted feeling, phi. That function was never missing, It was just buried. It whispered before it ever shouted. It tried to show you things in silence, but you ignored them because the world never rewarded you for feeling. And when introverted feeling begins to rise, it doesn't come as a thought. It comes as emotional precision. It arrives as internal loyalty. It activates as truth you feel, but can't justify. Introverted feeling doesn't want attention. It wants alignment. It doesn't want applause. It wants integrity. It's the compass you forgot you buried, still pointing north in a world that rewards maps. When introverted feeling integrates, it doesn't replace your logic. It refines it. You don't abandon structure. You bring it to life. You still calculate, but now there's conviction behind the precision. You still hold back, but now it's out of reverence, not defense. The old mask doesn't fall off. It becomes transparent. This rising emotional depth isn't a betrayal of your logic. It's the next dimension of it. You're not becoming softer. You're becoming more precise, more dimensional, more human. And here's the paradox. Your structure doesn't weaken. It sharpens. Your logic gains depth. Your vision becomes ethical. And your insight? It no longer just sees the pattern. It feels the cost of it. This is what Carl Jung meant by individuation, the slow process of becoming a whole psyche, not just a dominant one. So if someone with an INTJ psyche begins to feel more, sense more, care more, it should not be dismissed. That function rising within them isn't sentimentality. It's ethical alignment, not deviation, but development. And now it's time to dismantle one of the most persistent misconceptions about INTJs. The belief that they lack empathy simply because their empathy doesn't look emotional. Picture this. Someone breaks down in tears during a conversation. The INFJ instinctively leans in, senses the emotional weight, feels it as their own. They speak gently. They offer warmth before words. That's empathy as resonance, fast, fluid, relational. But the INTJ pauses. Not because they're cold, but because something's missing: context, structure, truth. They're watching, listening, scanning for the pattern. Then they learn this person was rejected for telling the truth, or punished for refusing to betray someone they loved. And suddenly, the signal fires. Not a mirror, but a code. Not emotional resonance, but moral recognition. Their empathy is precise, delayed, earned. It doesn't ignite on sight, it activates on principle. Not because someone is in pain, but because that pain reveals a betrayal of something sacred. INTJs respond not from emotional reflex, but from internal alignment. And when that same INTJ has integrated their feeling function, when introverted feeling is no longer buried but aligned, that empathy becomes something even stronger. Not just recognition, but inner loyalty to what is right. Pause again, because here's something almost no one talks about. INTJs don't bond through shared emotion. They bond through shared vision. You trust people not because they comfort you, but because they want to build the same thing you do. And here's something subtle, but piercing. Many INTJs have what I call the smile test. If someone smiles too easily at everyone, they grow cautious. Not because they reject kindness, but because unearned approval feels false. They're not seeking charm. They're watching for congruence. Loyalty that runs deeper than performance. That's why relationships often feel confusing, because others offer emotions, but not vision. And for you, vision is the deepest form of connection. That's why you've been misread. Not because you're unclear, but because you're rare. Because when introverted feeling finally awakens in the INTJ psyche, you begin to look like something that doesn't exist on any MBTI chart. Not a category, not a contradiction, but the slow emergence of a whole psyche finally coming into focus. It's when your psyche stops playing by preference and begins building toward wholeness. So if you feel caught between INTJ and INFJ, you're not broken, you're not confused, you're becoming. And evolution always feels like dissonance until it doesn't. And maybe that comment from the beginning, the one about not knowing if what you're feeling is even yours, that wasn't just theirs, it was yours too. Maybe all of this was something you've always known, but never had words for until now. Maybe it was never about being both types. Maybe it was about being one person, finally letting their soul speak in two languages. If you're still here, I want to give you something. A bonus. A key that only the curious ones ask for. You've probably heard this question before. If INTJs feel so deeply, aren't they just INFJs in disguise? Or put differently, when an INTJ integrates introverted feeling FI, do they start to act like an INFJ? So here's the truth. Both types share the same dominant function, introverted intuition. That's why both are future-oriented, meaning-driven, and pattern-sensitive. But what comes after that function is what makes the difference. INFJs have extroverted feeling FE as an auxiliary function, while INTJs have introverted feeling FI as a tertiary one. Extroverted feeling reaches outward. It senses how others feel and tries to harmonize the emotional field. It listens to the unspoken signals. It adjusts. It connects. It asks, "How are we feeling?" But introverted feeling moves inward. It watches how actions align with values, how words resonate with personal truth. Where extroverted feeling builds connection, introverted feeling builds conviction. It doesn't mirror the world. It tests it. It doesn't adapt to the atmosphere. It checks. Does this reflect who I really am? And that's why introverted feeling often stays quiet. Not because it feels less, but because it turns inward first, searching for alignment before expression. It aches in silence. It listens for congruence. It holds emotion like a sacred fire. Not to hide it, but to honor it. Introverted feeling doesn't flood the room. It lights a single candle and waits. If someone sees it, they're meant to. If you made it this far, I want to know who you are. Leave a comment that simply says, "I received the bonus." Subscribe now if this video felt like it spoke to something true in you. Turn on the bell if you don't want to miss the next one. And if this resonated with you, don't stop here. Watch the recommended videos to understand MBTI more deeply, especially for intuitive types like yours. You'll find the links in the description. Thank you for watching. See you soon in the next video. Take care.